Hello friends, very good morning to all of you. So today we are going to discuss PF28 part 3, that is choosing the right grant for your application. So we discussed, you have some understanding now what are the different grants in OAuth, like auth code flow, PKC flow, client credentials, ROPC, implicit, device code flow, like that. Yeah, so we can just try to understand like how we can choose the right grant for our use case. So I'll just show you some diagram which can help you to understand exactly which grant is suitable for your use case. So let's begin and we can understand there. So we have discussed like grants and the different types of grants, so we understand. So in this video we can talk about how to choose the appropriate grant for your use case or for your application. So this is a kind of flow diagram I built, so maybe let's see and try to understand. And definitely like we need to deep dive into the grants, like whether it's authorization code grant, whether it's PKC or ROPC or client credential, so we can understand the use case and how to configure in PingFederate, like that. And then we can test also using Postman. Okay, so let's understand this workflow. So what it says, that is the client acting on behalf of a resource owner. So you have no and yes. So it says, is the client acting on behalf of a resource owner? So if the client acting behalf of a resource owner, okay, then can the resource owner interact with the web browser? Okay, so if the client acting on behalf of a resource owner, then it's asking, can the resource owner interact with a web browser while using the client? Okay, whether it's able to interact with the web browser or not. If it's yes, then again it will check, is the client completely running inside of a web browser? I'll tell you what is exactly this when we say client running completely inside of a web browser. But for now, let's understand this. So first it checks that whether the client acting on behalf of a resource owner. If it is acting, then it's check whether the resource owner interact with the web browser. If yes, then just checking that whether the client running completely inside of a web browser. If it's running completely of a web browser, then it's a kind of browser based application. Then in that case, implicit grant can be fine. You can just go with the implicit grant. You can configure that application using implicit grant, and then you can get that single sign on. Okay. If the client is not running completely inside of a web browser, then in that case you can go with the authorization code. Okay, that's a server side application. Okay, or you can say some kind of web applications. So then you can go for authorization code. Again, you can check, there is one more condition, is the client a native application? So if your basically client software is a native application, in that case you can go for the PKC or dynamic registration. So we definitely need to understand more on all this flow. You are having a definition, but we can just deep dive. We can understand the workflow, and then we can just register in the PingFederate, and then we can test also using Postman. But for now, you can just understand this flow. Okay, so it looks for the client acting on behalf of resource owner, then check for the web browser interaction, and then checking whether the client is running completely inside of a web browser. If yes, then go for implicit. If no, then go for authorization code grant. And in authorization code grant also you have an option, if the client is a native application, then you can go for the authorization code with PKC. That's a PKC flow or dynamic registration. Okay, we can talk later on these things. Now let's understand here, like if your client is not acting on behalf of a resource owner, then in that case, what is the next condition? Is the client acting on its own behalf? So if the client acting on its own, that it's the client only interacting with the authorization server, that means it's a client acting on its own behalf. So in that case, you can go for the client credential grant. Okay, but if the condition says, is the client acting on its own behalf, if it is no, then there is another condition, is the client acting on the authority of a trusted third party, then you can go for the assertion. Okay, so first thing you check, that is a client acting on behalf of a resource owner. If no, then it's checking the condition, is the client acting on its own behalf? If yes, then go for client credential. If no, another condition, is the client acting on the authority of a trusted third party, then you can go for the assertion. Okay, and in this case also, like in the second condition, if the client acting on the behalf of a resource owner, In that case, we check the another condition that can the resource owner interacts with a web browser while using the client. If it is not able to interact with the browser, then it check another condition: does the user have a simple set of credentials like a password? If have, then you can go for the ROPC also, resource owner password credential grant also. And you have device flow grant also. I haven't mentioned here. We can just understand that also. But yeah, if client is unable to interact with the web browser, then also we can go for a device flow grant. So we understand more on device flow grant once we just discuss that grant in a separate session. So this is all about that kind of a rough idea of the flow diagram, what to choose, how to choose the right appropriate grant type. Okay. Now let's discuss quickly. I think you have aware. You are now I think you are aware of the native application. What is exactly the native application? But let's quickly discuss like what is told here is the client running completely inside a web browser. Okay. So what is exactly this? So this does not include application that execute on a server. Okay, and whose user interface is accessed through a web browser. Only application that live and die entirely within the browser itself. If so, then you will want to use the implicit flow as it mentioned here, as it is an optimization for this specific case. If not, whether the application is served from a web server or runs natively on the user's computer, you will want to use the authorization code flow as we have seen in there. Like if the client is not running completely inside of a web browser, then you can go for authorization code. And again, if it is a native, then you can go for the PKC or dynamic registration. Okay, so that is about this thing. And then let's discuss the another thing. Like next session we can talk like we'll try to understand the application thing, like web application, browser application, native application. I'll show you some code also that you can develop at your side and you can do the testing. Okay, so let's quickly jump to there, and if you have any question, please put in the comment section. Thank you.